So Georgia had the hardest strength of schedule in the nation this season, and still got a bye in the college football playoff. That's what the narrative should have been for this team over the last few weeks, but instead everyone wanted to pick apart everything this team doesn't do well, and the ways they have struggled this season. But now with that bye, the Bulldogs can use this next week to relax and also prepare for whoever they may face in round 2. They are obviously going to have a close eye on the Notre Dame vs Indiana game. I'm assuming the Irish will win. They have been playing some of the best football out of anyone as of late, but you still never know. And I'm going to talk about who Georgia fans should be cheering for and what the team has to do to make yet another playoff run in January. But before I begin, I would really appreciate it if you would drop a like and subscribe. It only takes 5 seconds, plus you can always change your mind. We are on the road to 40,000 subscribers, and with your support, I believe that we can get there super fast. Alright, so I think for anyone that has watched a lot of college football this season, the easier game for Georgia in round 2 is obvious. I think Indiana has a lot less experience, with them only really playing and losing to Ohio State, and size-wise, Georgia is a much larger team. So I think the Dogs have a way bigger advantage over the Hoosiers than the Irish. But who knows, we could watch Indiana go into enemy territory and play their best game of the season. We've seen it all year long. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you want an ugly game where the winner is not feeling too good about themselves afterward. But I can guarantee that neither of these teams will be rollovers or a cakewalk, especially with some of the inconsistency we have seen among the Bulldogs this season. I think Georgia has just as good of a chance to win it all as anyone, just because there has been no team that has specifically stood out. But it would be foolish for me to say that Georgia is just going to walk into their first playoff game and dominate without facing any adversity. Anyways, besides that, I just don't think anyone outside of Georgia fans wanted to see the Bulldogs pull off what they did over the past few weeks, because it felt like PTSD. Kirby Smart once again showed why he's the greatest coach in all of college football, and so many fans watching Georgia win the SEC championship were thinking that this really could be another championship year when we all thought the dynasty was over. This team is resilient, they fight through their imperfections, they make the necessary adjustments, and they have just found a way to own Texas. There is just something the Bulldogs have in common with teams like the Chiefs, the Steelers, all these legendary programs, and that is that they are good at winning football games no matter how it gets done. Anyways, it really is weird to see the changing landscape of what college football is becoming, because even with the Bulldogs gearing up for this playoff run, this is the time of year where players are on the move. A lot of the backups are letting everyone know their plans to head elsewhere next season. There are a lot of moving parts, and not everyone is always focused on the actual playoffs themselves, which is just crazy to me, but hey, it's capitalism at its finest. One thing that has stayed consistent though, is that the Carson Beck / Gunnar Stockton situation is going to be the X factor for if Georgia can win these upcoming big games. Beck definitely has had his criticizers this season, and now he's hurt. He's made a lot of mistakes along the way, but if he plays, which I'm assuming he doesn't, he really will have one final chance to kind of rewrite the narrative for who he is, and he can show NFL scouts why he may be worth a draft pick in the later rounds. And he doesn't have to be a hero. He needs to play within the system, and he needs to get the talent, the football, to make plays in space. But same goes for Gunnar Stockton, who really showed us how much of a dog he is. He will need to use the best skill position players to his advantage. That's one of the things, if you remember back to the Alabama days, that Mac Jones feasted on. You could tell at the time he was never that special of a quarterback, but he was super smart and never outthought himself. Literally, he just got his best players the ball in a timely manner, and that's how he was able to become so successful. And right now, he's starting to figure it out in the NFL as well. He's had some good games as of late, even though I know the Patriots suck. I thought Beck got better as the season progressed. There were a couple of bad games, but I think it all just speaks to the loaded roster and talent the Longhorns have. Georgia literally won that first game against Texas when Carson's final stat line was only 175 yards with 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. When you can win a game like that, that basically means that when Beck does have a good game, it's tough for them to lose. And again, if it's Stockton, even with the so-called inexperience, I think he's going to go out there and once again show the fight he has. But going into this postseason, there's going to be jitters. So I think Kirby Smart should start whoever is behind center off with a few easy throws to get that person in a rhythm. And Stockton will need to mentally prepare for those split-second decisions where he has to decide if it's time to make a play or to take things safe and throw the ball away. Because sometimes trying to be a hero really can be someone's downfall. He's just got to play within the offense and all will be good. and when the offense is free-flowing, it's a nightmare for any defense to try to defend with all the talent and all the size Georgia has both on the interior and the outside. Another thing that Georgia is of course going to have to rely a ton on throughout the playoffs is their ground game and leaning on the offensive line up front, because we all know one thing that can offset inconsistent quarterback play is rushing for over 200 yards. I think that's the magic number, and it's a number that I think ETN can get them to with enough carries. They were at about 150 as a team against the Longhorns and scored 22 points. And in the playoffs, if they rush for 200, they will be around 30 points, which should be enough to beat pretty much anyone if the defense shows up. And speaking of the defense, that side of the ball could be the real X factor. I know I talked about Carson Beck. I know offensively there are so many guys that will have to step up, but if the defense plays well, it creates a domino effect across all phases of the team. And I'll admit, the defense has been up and down all year. There was that game against Tech where the defense allowed 42 points, albeit there were a million overtimes. But Notre Dame has a really good offense, and the Dogs are going to have to lock in and defend. And they definitely set the tone in the SEC title game. It was one of the best performances of the season. Starks came into this season as one of the most highly ranked players in the nation on defense, and he showed up and shut down Quinn Ewers. He led the team with 8 tackles, and then Dalen Everett had 2 interceptions. If the Georgia defenders can swarm to the ball for 60 minutes and create a few turnovers, that will put whoever is behind center in a great situation to win. Beck or Stockton will be put in a spot where it's ultimately up to them to just not make mistakes. But yeah, I don't really want to go too in depth on things. It's been a long but fast season, and Georgia will just need to go out there and not overthink things and just play football like they've been doing. They're battle tested, they've had a lot of ups and downs this season, so they will be ready for anything, and when adversity strikes, they don't panic because they've been there before. Obviously, it's a tough road ahead. I think just about anyone could win it all, but don't count out the Dogs. And don't just take my word for it. Here's what some other people have had to say.
I don't think that they're going to face a receiver better than what they saw in Singleton and Georgia Tech. I don't think that they're going to see a receiving corps as better as they saw at Texas. And Joe, and they let's call it what it is. They were snapping necks and cashing checks. They gave up a lot of yards, but Texas was just throwing it all over the place. And that they have a better room than you. I'm with you on the 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Okay.
But I'm going to warn you on this for those teams, Notre Dame, and we'll talk about Notre Dame in just a moment here. So we're going to do the opposite part of this in just a moment. The counteract of that is you do not have the weapons that these other teams that Georgia has gone up against and faced and been able to contain. There comes a part here where I'm saying the matchups for Georgia are the best that they could have predicted.
That's really all I got for this video. Thank you all so much if you made it to this point. And if you enjoyed and haven't yet, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe because your support truly does mean the world. And also, let me know what you would like to see next. And until then, I will see you all later.